watching Channels TV. It's a little chilly. So I'm outside in my lounge. Channels TV is the way that I keep up to date with Nigerian news. All right. So like many of you abroad, like myself, I'm based in Las Vegas, Nevada, United States. I have a principal residence. Let me bring this a little closer. I have a principal residence in Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria, in the village. It's about a 24,000 square feet residential private property. Big property on a big lot. And like many of you, or at least most of you, maybe even some of you abroad who have principal residences in Nigeria, I want to talk about how, because this is a common issue, it's a common problem with Nigerians abroad with homes in Nigeria, how they maintain the upkeep of their homes or home while they are abroad. And I'm gonna share with you how I manage my property remotely from the United States. What most people recommend, and this isn't something that I do, is for you to allow someone to occupy the house while you're gone. So the belief is that when someone is in the house, they will clean it, they'll take care of it, they will cut the grass, dust the shelves, and furniture, and keep the house in order until you return to utilize the property, which for a lot of us, some people go for 2 years, 3 years. In my case, I make every effort to go back to Nigeria every year, and I've been doing so since 2020. I tried that option before. I actually tried that option for about 3 years. And I can unequivocally say that it was one of the worst decisions that I made. Because in 2020, when I sat down with this certain individual who I hired, this wasn't just some family members living in my house for free. I was actually paying him a monthly salary. And he's a family member. His family's house isn't too far from mine. And I sat down with him and I said, this is what I need from you. We are going to talk and agree on, number one, is this something that you want to do? And number two, we talked about the salary. I actually paid him a little bit more than he was asking for, because I didn't want there to be any excuse for him not doing what I wanted him to do. When we sat down, I said, few things that I want from you. You're not, he's a guy. You're not allowed to bring women into my home. All I need you to do is cut the grass. You're not allowed to live or sleep in my home. So no women, no sleeping over, cut the grass. Every week or occasionally open the window to let the air into the house. That was what I wanted. And this was actually before the property was fenced. So I was paying him a monthly, bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. I will send him half of what his wage was. There wasn't really any confirmation he was doing these things, but I was just dealing with him based on trust and the fact that he was a family member. So you can just imagine paying someone a salary but then there's no visual confirmation of whether they are cutting the grass or whether they are dusting the house or keeping it clean. You're just going based on just trust. And this particular individual also did not have a functioning cell phone because he lived in the village. So the following year that I went, and this was when I started seeing signs that he may not be doing what I'm asking him to do. Because before I went home to Nigeria, I had a friend of mine who lives in Uyo just to go to the village and do a visual observation of the property. And he came back and told me that, well, the grass is not really being cut. The perimeter, we have some outgrown weeds and grass that's not, that's not being cut down. And although he didn't go inside of the house, just observing from outside, it looked as if the house wasn't being maintained. And meanwhile, mind you, I am paying this particular person a salary. So what I did was to tell him, just without trying to avoid conflict, I instructed him to find someone, or at least work with this guy that's living in the house to clean up the place, which I ended up paying for. I had to pay extra because I was going home. And this was about 2 weeks before I traveled to Nigeria in 2020, in late 2021. And I just wanted to go to a place that's clean, where I can relax. It's mine. I don't have to deal with anybody and stuff like that. So he got the place cleaned up for me, cut the grass, mowed the lawn. They did as much as they could as far as cleaning the interior of the house. I mean, it's a relatively big house for the village. And this particular property was what my dad built back in 1994 that I ended up taking over when he passed away. So I did my own little touch-ups and remodeling, and I'm still working on it as I speak. So when I got home, yes, the outside was clean because I had paid for it. And then when I walked inside of the house, and it's in Nigeria what they call a duplex, where you have the first floor, the ground floor, and then you have a top floor where the bedrooms are. The bottom floor has like a private guest room, and then the top floor is where the master room is. And that top floor still needs work done. So when I got home, I noticed that the bottom floor was relatively swept and dusted and clean. But then when I climbed the stairs to go to the top floor, I couldn't believe what I saw. It looked like that place hadn't been touched in over a year. There were lizard droppings everywhere and spider cobwebs everywhere. And I ended up sitting with him and with the guy, and I said, what's going on here? Why isn't the top floor of the property clean? And he said, and his excuse to me was, oh, well, it's because we are not using it. It's because the walls need plastering. And I said, listen, that is when I'm telling you clean my house, I mean sweep my house from top to bottom. That's what I mean. So his excuse to me was, oh, well, it's just because the top floor is still under construction, and that is why he hadn't gone up there to sweep. So imagine I paid him for a whole year. He wasn't cutting the grass. So that's kind of like when I started noticing some signs that this might become an issue. So I stayed in the village, stayed at the property for the 2 or 3 weeks that I was there, ended up coming back. So before I left, I did a walkthrough with him, and I highlighted and pointed out the things that I absolutely need done. For instance, we addressed that top floor issue, where I said it doesn't matter whether it's under construction or not. My instruction to you is every month still go up there, because I still need to do some plastering on that to keep the lizards from coming in, because they were coming in through holes in the wall. And I knew that I was going to get this done at some point in that year. So I told him it doesn't matter Even if you have to do it once every 2 weeks, get a broom, go up there, sweep up the lizard droppings, make it look nice. This is your job. This is what I'm paying you for. So we did a walkthrough of the property, and I also told him about the allowing the grass to grow. I told him he needed to address that. That you can't let this get to a point where it overwhelms you, because this is a 23,000 square feet property. It's relatively big. And he said that, okay, that he's going to work on it. And I didn't notice any activity of him living in the house. There wasn't any mattress. There wasn't nothing there for him, with the exception of the guest room that I was staying in. So there wasn't really any noticeable signs of someone occupying the house that year. So we agreed on what he needed to do. And I ended up returning back to the United States, and I continued paying him his salary. And then I also told him that, oh, and by the way, I'm going to start sending somebody quarterly, every 3 months, to come to the house and inspect. It's not that I don't trust you, but I need some visual confirmation that the house is being kept, is being managed and maintained the way I want it to. So I ended up returning back to the United States, continued paying him. And then when I sent my friend back about 3 months after I returned to go and do exactly what I was hoping would happen, he came back to me and said, hey, like, he noticed that in the dining room that there was a mattress in the dining room, that it appears that this individual has been living in the house and sleeping in the house or doing something. And that was the report that I got. And I immediately got a hold of the guy in the village, and I said, hey, what's going on? The agreement that I had with you was that I did not want anyone sleeping in my house. I didn't want anyone living there. And then his reasoning was, oh, I'm sorry, I got into a fight, or I got into a verbal confrontation with one of the uncles in his family's house. And as a result of that fight that they had, just for peace to reign, he needed to go somewhere and clear his head. And that is why he took his mattress into my home and started sleeping on the floor. And I'm like, well, why didn't you ask me? I asked him that question. Why didn't you ask me before doing this? He said, well, because he didn't have a phone and he didn't know how to get a hold of me, and that is why he couldn't bring it up. So I said, okay, it's not a big deal, you are what it was, and it wasn't a big deal. Because number one, I was upset that I wasn't consulted, I wasn't told. He just happened to just bring his mattress. Because human nature, it will start with a mattress. The next thing, they'll bring a chair. The next thing, they'll start hanging portraits on the wall. And before you know what's happening, they've moved their family into. That's usually how things kind of pans out in these situations. And I didn't want that. That's why I didn't want anyone living in the house. So then, after that, I couldn't tell him move away, because I knew he had issues in his family's house. So I said, okay, I will allow you to stay. And maybe by you staying in the house now, not the guest room, in the dining room with your mattress, maybe that will motivate you more, or give you the incentive to clean up the house the way that. So that was my thought process. Okay, well, he's physically there now. He's going to cut the grass now. He's going to sweep the floors now. Did not happen. Did not happen. Continue paying him. And then that year when I went home, I'm okay, well, if he's telling me that his issue is as a result of him not having a cell phone to reach me, okay, I will solve that problem. So I bought him a cell phone. Okay? Bought him a cell phone, took it to the village in 2022, gave him that cell phone. And I said, now you don't have any reason to reach me for whatever, to ask questions, or if you're not sure about something. And after I've given him the phone, then it becomes another problem in the sense that, well, now he doesn't have the money to buy data and buy minutes, airtime for the phone. Okay, fine. I will fund your data. I will fund your airtime. Settled? He said, well, not entirely, because there's another issue. I don't know how to use WhatsApp. Not a problem. I took him to you and linked him up with someone that consults and trains people how to use WhatsApp. So I had him with the guy for about a day. The guy showed him how to use. Okay, now you have a phone. You have airtime that's loaded. You have data that's loaded. And now you've been shown how to use WhatsApp. Settled, no issue. I should be able to call you from the US. You're gonna answer, or you'll be able to can reach me directly from the village, or go somewhere where there's network to call me. So that was it. So I ended up going home that year again, and slowly I started furnishing the property because the property remained relatively unfurnished. I'd been relatively unfurnished since 2020. So I bought a bed. Well, I bought some furniture, living room furniture. Just in my own way, started furnishing the property, knowing that it was there. Now, when I returned back to the United States in 2020, this is 2022, in 2023, at this point I was kind of getting a little bit, I started looking for sort of like an exit strategy. Like, okay, how can I get this guy out of my home? Yes, he's doing his best to maintain the house and cut the grass, but for the amount that I'm paying him, that property should look like a golf course. Because it's not like he has a job. He doesn't have a job. His job was to maintain my home, and I paid him relatively well for somebody who's in the village. He doesn't have any mortgage. He doesn't have any rent. He doesn't have any light bills. All he has to do is wake up every day and maintain my house. If he wants to pick up a side job, that's his prerogative. He can do that. But as far as what I was paying him, it was more than enough down the going rate at the time in the village, because I wanted my house to be kept clean to the highest standards and things of that nature. So at this point, after about 2 years of this guy living in my house, I'm paying him a monthly salary. He's not really doing his job. I started looking for a way. I started cultivating in my mind of, I need to take my property back and get him out of there. So and you're gonna hear stories of people. This particular guy in my village as well, who lives in Ohio, and he's sort of going through, at least at the time, was going through the same situation that I was going through. He had a guy living in his property when rent-free. When it was time that he wanted that property back, the guy refused to release the gate keys to him, because he was claiming that he was cleaning the house, but you were living there. I don't know if he was paying him or not, but the guy ended up refusing to release the gate key to him, and it kind of ended up becoming an issue where you got certain people involved, and I don't really know the outcome of what happened, because I didn't follow up with him, because I was actually going through my own issues. So it was during this time that I started thinking about, okay, how are we going to solve this grass cutting matter, the overgrown grass on those lots? Because for the past 2.5 years, I've been paying you. You're not cutting my grass. At least if you're cutting it, you're not cutting it low enough, because I didn't want a situation where I would create a petri dish for snakes and animals to be on the property. So the grass needed to be cut low. So that was when, I went agricultural on this. That was what informed the decision of buying the bull that I bought now, that's on the property now, that's eating the grass. So I said, okay, I've always been thinking about ranching. I've always been thinking about building a ranching business in the village. Maybe this is an opportunity. And by this time, I'd already fenced. So let's backtrack. I didn't add this part. So from between 2020 to 2023, I fenced the property, put a gate, secured the property with a fence and a gate. Because when I would travel to the village, people were sort of just coming in randomly from the streets and knocking at the door. I'll be sleeping. Somebody will be out there knocking at the door asking to see me. So to stop that, I decided to fence the property and put up a gate. And I started thinking, okay, we still have the issue of this guy not cutting the grass. And I've always wanted to become a rancher. I've always wanted to get into that agricultural beef space. So what I'm going to do is buy a cow that I can test that concept with just maybe one bull. So I bought a bull because I didn't want I didn't want a cow. I wanted a bull. So I said, okay, at least the bull is gonna do two things for me. It's gonna serve as a guinea pig, which I'm going to use to test the survivability of cattle in that region. That's the first. Test the concept to see if ranching is something that's possible. And number two, at least I'm going to have a bull that's going to mow down the grass and eat the grass. Yes, he's going to have like bull droppings and bull manure and things like that, but it's okay. Instead of him now cutting the grass, his job will be to clean up the bull manure and dispose of them in a land. I had another land that I purchased close to dispose of the bull manure there. So then that solved the problem, because now the bull was able to go in, and I left the bull on the property. The bull would mow down the grass, and I told the guy, instructed him, I said, okay, occasionally take him outside, stake him down, let the bull graze the perimeter as well, which actually worked wonders. So now I paid him a little extra because now I have cattle on the property. I said, look, I'm going to give you an additional more money, add a little bit more on top of what I'm paying you for you to just care for the bull, allow the bull to graze. Any part that the bull can get to graze, you can actually cut that part down and feed that grass to the bull. So that was how I introduced the bull on the property. So at the same time, though, I was still having issues with him now officially residing on the property, because there was never really an exit plan for him. He didn't tell me, okay, I just need a place to stay for a month, or I just needed a place to stay for maybe a few weeks. He had now physically moved onto the property and living there full time, which I had an issue with. So, and there was, again, what I'm saying about extent, this is what you have to be careful about as far as like human expansion. So remember I said he moved in, and what was supposed to be temporary ended up becoming permanent. And he started hanging portraits on the wall. And the next thing you know, then he carved out an area on my property and started cultivating cocoyam. And when I sent my friend again to do another visual inspection of the property, he came back and said, this guy is now cultivating cocoyam on your land. He's now farming on literally imagine, my primary residence where I live. Somebody has the audacity to be cultivating cocoyam on there. So I immediately got a hold of him and I said, I want that cocoyam. You see the issues that this is starting to cause me, the anxiety that this is starting to cause me now. I said, okay, I need you to immediately dig up that cocoyam, remove it. I don't want any cultivation on the property. And he ended up removing the cocoyam and disposed of it. That is where the expansion sort of problem started. So fast forward this is 2024 now. Fast forward I went home last year, 2023. When I got home, I had a particular land that the land that I was going to build my Gary factory on. I had that land cleared. And I built a foundation. I wanted to sort of like erect a small processing factory that I was actually going to give to him to run for me. So when we got home, we did all that. And before I left to come back to the United States, there's this huge space. The property is like 3,300 square meters. There's a huge space that we had cleared that I actually wanted that space to I wanted the grass on that land space. This is a different land entirely that I'm talking about, to grow. So then that way I can start moving the cattle, the bull, from the principal residence when he's low on grass onto the factory land where he can graze additional grass there. So before leaving for Nigeria, for the US, I told him, informed him specifically of my goal. Keep this place open. I don't want anything on it. There should be no cultivation on it. I just want grass to naturally grow, so then that way we can be rotating the cattle from the principal residence to the factory land, which wasn't far away. And he said, okay. When I left back to come to the United States, he immediately saw that opportunity because I wasn't there. He started cultivating cassavas on the land. And a few months later, when I sent my friend back to do another visual inspection of my property, that's usually what I do. I'll say, check on this property, check on that land, check on this land, and give me a report of what you're seeing, take pictures and photos. And I think that's something you should do as well. Find someone that can go, if you're abroad and you have a house that you own, always, every quarter, send someone to go and check on the property for you, take pictures and videos and send to you. So the guy came and told me that there's some cultivation activity on this land. Did you do it? Did you authorize someone to plant cassavas? And I said, no, I did not authorize. Find out who did it. And then he went up and did some investigation. And the guy owned up to it that, oh yeah, I'm sorry, it was just a 10-month cultivation. I was going to just plant there, and then by the time Rich gets back from the US, I would have harvested it and things like that. I'm like, well, the instructions that I gave you was I didn't want anyone cultivating on my property. And you still went ahead. And so that was the last straw for me, because at this point, it was getting disrespectful. So I told him that, yes, that it was the last. So before I fired him, he ended up resigning. Okay. He ended up resigning from his job, which was okay for me because I'd already been thinking about how am I going to get this guy out of here. And for him to do what he did, have it cultivating cassavas on my land without permission, and he resigned from his position, and then he packed his stuff out of the house. So now I have a problem now because I still have this cattle. Who's going to care for the cattle now that he's gone? So when he resigned, he did a walkthrough with my assistant / friend on the property, highlighting, okay, this is what is there. They did an inventory report. But then he left the fact that he had taken my generator. I had a small generator at the time that I was using. He ended up taking my generator to his family's house, and he was using it without my permission. So anyway, I kind of worked that out and got that generator back. So now we have this issue of, fine, he's out of the house, he's returned the keys, but there's no one else, there's no one around to now care for the bull, or to be rotating the bull to be grazing. But that wasn't an issue. So when he ended up leaving, I worked out a deal with a couple of the young guys in the homestead there to, under the direction and under the management of my assistant in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State, so I left the gates open. I gave them access to the property, to the land, to the property, but not access to the main house. So their job was just to give the cattle water, ensure that the cattle has been rotated, let's say once or twice a week, from the principal property to the farmland to graze, and then occasionally take the cattle out around the village to just sort of like graze on just village grass and things like that. And that has been working perfectly for me, because now now I ended up structuring a deal with these guys. I call them the cowboys. I structured a deal with these guys. These are school kids. Cattle doesn't necessarily have to be grazed or moved every day. They could move it on their free time. They can move the cow on the weekends. And they're happy to take half of what I was paying this guy on a monthly basis to do this job. So that is how I've been able to maintain the outside, the exterior of my property, as far as like controlling the grass. It's a combination of having that cattle there, grazing. This may not work for some people, depending on the size of, but all you really need is just to have the exterior of your property maintained and clean. And then the interior, it's something that you could work out a deal with somebody to go in on a quarterly basis, sweep the floor, dust the furnitures, open the windows for you, and maintain your property that way. The last thing you want to do is to have a family member living on your site. So that is how I've been able to manage that, and it's worked well for me. It's worked wonders for me. There hasn't been any complaint. I don't have to worry about somebody bringing his family into the house. I don't have to worry anymore about people cultivating on the land. I don't have to worry about any of that. So this is something, and everyone's case is going to be different, but I'm just sharing with you how I'm able to maintain my property remotely with relative peace of mind from the United States. Your case may be different. If you have to hire someone externally to go in every 3 months, sweep around, observe the property, take pictures, clean it up a little bit, you're better off doing that until you return home than having a family member or a friend living on your property. Now, I don't have anybody living on the site. I can go home anytime that I want, unannounced. I don't have to do anything but just get my key, walk into my home as if I'm walking into my home in the United States. That is the best way for you to maintain your property from abroad. Refrain from having family. I mean, when I first started this thing, people were telling me, oh, allow this auntie to live there, allow this uncle to live there. These people will destroy your home. When you allow people in your home, guess what they're going to start doing? They're going to start bringing their friends. They're going to start bringing their energy. Anyone associated with them, they're going to start bringing those people into your home. And what are you going to do when you want to visit your home? Are you going to call them and say, hey, clean this place up, I'm coming? Now you're announcing that you're coming. In my case, I don't have to do that. If I want to travel in the next couple of weeks, I can send someone to go in 2 weeks prior to me. They don't have to know that I'm coming. Just go in there and clean up the place, make sure it looks nice. It's you make it routine. Just make sure, to them, it's just a routine cleanup, routine maintenance. And then you arrive into your property unannounced. That is the best way to do it. So I hope this helps some people. Sharing my experience, sharing some of the problems and challenges that I had, and sharing how I was able to overcome those challenges. And now my cattle has been there for over a year. He's survived, and that's why I was able to accomplish 2 things. I'm still maintaining my lawn because I have the cattle that's cleaning, and then the cowboys also go in, and that is part of their job. They'll go in and clean up the manure on the property and dispose of them in the land that I told you that I purchased close to the house. So that has been working well for me, okay? So I hope you guys find this video informative. Just know that it is possible. You can have a home in Nigeria and maintaining it remotely from the United States without issues. All right? Talk to you guys later. Be sure to subscribe. Thanks.